Mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, "He who wants to advance on the path of perfection must never complain about the difficulties on the path, for each is an opportunity for a new progress. To complain is a sign of weakness and insincerity," says our Divine Mother. Words of our Divine Mother taken from the compilations of the works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo and our Divine Mother by A.S. Dalal, book Psychic Being, topic Contact with a Psychic Being, page 45. Question, sweet mother, I think one gets the psychic consciousness only when the psychic comes to the surface, or when one can go deep enough inside to enter into contact with one's psychic being. For this, our Divine Mother says, very often when one touches certain parts of the mind which are under the psychic influence and full of light, and the joy of that light, or when one touches certain very pure and very high parts of the emotive being, which has the most generous, most unselfish emotions, one also has the impression of being in contact with one's soul. But this is not the true soul. It is not the soul in its very essence. These are parts of the being under its influence and manifesting something of it. So, very often, people enter into contact with these parts, and this gives them illuminations, great joy, revelations, and they feel they have found their soul. But it is only the part of the being under its influence, one part or another. Our Divine Mother says exactly what happens is that one touches these things, has experiences, and then it gets veiled. And one wonders, how is it that I touched my soul and now I have fallen back into this state of ignorance and inconscience? But that's because one had not touched one's soul. One had touched those parts of the being which are under the influence of the soul and manifest something of it, but are not it. Our Divine Mother says, when one enters consciously into contact with one's soul and the union is established, it is over. It can no longer be undone. It is something permanent, constant, which resists everything and which at any moment, whatever, if referred to, can be found, whereas the other things, one can have very fine experiences and then it gets veiled again, and one tells oneself, how does that happen? I saw my soul and I now do not find it anymore. Our Divine Mother says, it was not the soul one had seen. And these things are very beautiful and give you very impressive experience, but this is not the contact with the psychic being itself. Our Divine Mother says the contact with the psychic being is definitive. And it is about this that I say when people ask, Do I have a contact with my psychic being? Your question itself proves that you don't have it. Our Divine Mother says, in Question and Answers of 1989, we are conscious of only a significant role or portion of our being. What are those insignificant parts of our being? Says the child. For this, our Divine Mother says, almost all of them. There are only few things which are not insignificant. All our ordinary reactions, thoughts, sensations, actions, movements, all this is very insignificant. It is only at times when there is a flash of the higher consciousness through the psychic and opening into something else, a contact with the psychic being which may last for a second. At that moment, it is not insignificant. Otherwise, all the rest is repeated in millions and millions of copies. Your way of seeing, acting, reacting, thoughts, feelings, all that is ordinary. And you believe you are extraordinary, particularly when you are seized by extraordinary sensations and feelings, those that you consider extraordinary. You believe you are lifted higher, nearer something superhuman, but you're quite mistaken. It is nothing but an ordinary state, deplorably ordinary. You must enter deeper, try to see within yourself if you want to find something which is not insignificant. Question. Sweet Mother, in the book Lights on Yoga, Sri Aurobindo writes, the nexus between the psychic being and the higher consciousness is the principle. Sweet Mother, ordinarily, is there not a nexus between the psychic being and the higher consciousness? For this, our Divine Mother says, ordinarily means in the ordinary life, a relation between the psychic being. For this, the child says, yes, sweet Mother. For that, our Divine Mother says, it's almost totally unconscious. In the ordinary life, says our Divine Mother, there is not one person in a million who has a conscious contact with his psychic being, even momentarily. The psychic being may work from within, but so invisibly and unconsciously for the outer being that is as though it did not exist. And in most cases, the immense majority, almost the totality of cases, it is as though it were asleep, not at all active, in a kind of torpor. Our Divine Mother says, it is only with the sadhana and a very persistent effort that one succeeds in having a conscious contact with the psychic being. Naturally, it is possible that there are exceptional cases, but this is truly exceptional, and there are so few that they could be counted, where the psychic being is an entirely formed, liberated being, master of itself, which has chosen to return to earth in a human body in order to do its work. And in this case, says our Divine Mother, even if the person doesn't do the sadhana consciously, it is possible that the psychic being is powerful enough to establish more or less conscious relation. But these cases are, to say, unique and exception which confirms the rule. Our Divine Mother says, in almost all cases, a very sustained effort is needed to become aware of one's psychic being. Usually, it is considered that if one can do it in 30 years, one is very lucky. 30 years of sustained effort. It may happen then it's quicker. But this is so rare that immediately one says, this is not an ordinary human being. That's the case of people who have been considered more or less divine beings, who were great yogis, great initiates. Our Divine Mother says, naturally, it is very difficult to establish a constant contact between the most external physical consciousness and the psychic consciousness. And the physical consciousness has plenty of goodwill. It is very regular. It tries a great deal, but it is slow and heavy. It takes long. It is difficult to move. It doesn't get tired, but it makes no effort. It goes its way slowly, quietly. It can take centuries to put the external consciousness in contact with the psychic. But for some reason or another, the vital takes a hand in it. A passion seizes in. It wants this contact for some reason or other, which is not always a spiritual reason, but wants this contact. It wants it with all its energy, with all its strength, passion, and fervor. In 3 months, the thing is done. So, then take care of it, the vital. Treat it with great consideration, but never submit to it, for it will drag you into all kinds of troublesome, untoward experiments. And if you succeed in convincing it in some way or another, then you will advance with giant strides on the path. Our Divine Mother says there are two principal things. This, the capacity of enthusiasm, which makes one come out of his greater or lesser inertia in order to throw himself more or less totally into the thing which rouses him. As for the instance, in an artist for an art, in a scientist for his science, every person who creates or builds and has an opening, the opening of a special faculty, possibility, creating an enthusiasm in him. When this is active, something in the being awakens, and there is a participation of almost the whole being in the thing done. There is this. And then there are, for those who have an innate faculty of gratitude, those who have an ardent need to respond with warmth, devotion, joy to something which they feel like marvel hidden behind the whole life, behind the tiniest little element, the least little event of life, who feel this sovereign beauty or infinite grace which is behind all things. Our Divine Mother says the contact for them with the psychic is very frequent and almost constant to the extent they were capable of it, conscious, not very unconscious, but conscious, but a little in the sense that they felt that they were carried, helped, uplifted above themselves. The capacity for enthusiasm, something which throws you out of your miserable, mean little ego, and the generous gratitude, the generosity of the gratitude, which also flings itself in the thanksgiving out of the little ego. These are the two powerful levers to enter into contact with the divine in one's psychic being. This serves as a link with the psychic being, the surest link. Our Divine Mother says, usually those who become conscious of their psychic being accept that it will liberate them from vital and physical attractions and activities. They seek to escape from the world in order to live in the joy of the contemplation of the divine and in the immutable peace of constant contact with Him. The attitude of those who want to practice Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga is quite different. When they have found their psychic being and are united with it, they ask it to turn its gaze towards the physical being in order to act on it with the knowledge that comes from the contact with the divine and to transform the body so that it may be able to receive and manifest the divine consciousness and harmony. As soon as one is truly in touch with the psychic, one loses this kind of narrowness, agony, agony which is so bad. I must be quick, I must be quick. There is not much time. I must hurry. One does things very badly and does not do them all at all anymore. But as soon as there is a contact with the psychic, they indeed disappear. One begins to be a little more vast, calm, and peaceful, and to live in eternity. Question, sweet mother, the psychic being in us is always in contact with the divine, so one should have this experience all the time for. If one were in contact with the psychic being all the times, yes, it is a fact, says the Divine Mother. From the moment one is in contact with the Divine Presence all the time. You may reverse the statement saying, I shall know that I am in contact with my psychic being when I am in contact with the Divine Presence all the time in all the things. This will be a proof for me that I am in contact with the psychic being. Question, sweet mother. Can it be said that the psychic vibration is the vibration of the divine love? For this, our Divine Mother says, no. Find your psychic being and you will understand what divine love is. Do not try to come into contact with the divine love because this will yet again be a vital desire pushing you. Your will perhaps not to be aware of it, but it will be a vital desire. Our Divine Mother says you must make an effort to come into touch with your psychic being, to become aware and free in the consciousness of your psychic being, and then quite naturally, spontaneously, you will know what divine love is. Question, sweet mother. This morning during pranam, I was sitting in the pranam room. Sweet and humble tears began to flow. They were intense and ardent prayers. Love and joy were also there. What happiness! What is this moment? For this, our Divine Mother says it is a contact established with the psychic, the true soul. For this, the child says, sweet mother, I must have felt something during my pranam because afterwards I wept. Oh, my sweet mother. Why? For this, our Divine Mother says, because during the pranam, I re-established the contact between your ordinary consciousness and the psychic consciousness. I re-establish the contact between your ordinary consciousness and the psychic consciousness. The extreme sweetness of the psychic consciousness always makes the ordinary consciousness or the outer consciousness weep with emotion, says our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother continues to say, there is a kind of inner communion with the psychic being which takes place when one willingly gives up a desire. Because of this, one feels a much greater joy than if one has satisfied his desire. The first contact with the force gives the psychic being the power to dominate the consciousness and govern the being. The faith, the trust in the divine grace is in the psychic. Behind there, like that in the psychic, sometimes it is a feeling, sometimes it is a thought, sometimes even it is the body who is in contact, which is in contact with the psychic. Under the influence of the psychic, even without knowing it, at that moment, this kind of trust, of faith, comes in front like that and supports. This happens when one has momentary contacts with the psychic. So it means that there is a conscious contact with the psychic and it comes to help you. It is a special grace bestowed. That is, according to the part which is active, according to the necessity of the moment, it is here or there, or that suddenly you feel this trust which takes possession of you and guards you. The day an external being with the psychic being One may say that the physical being of this person is organized by the central divine consciousness. The moment you put yourself in contact with it, submit yourself to it, you are organized by it, by the central divine consciousness. Our Divine Mother says it is usually first contact with the psychic being which brings the experience, a part of consciousness, part of the being which is united has this experience. The position of that part of the consciousness in relation to that part of the world, if you have the will or take care or able to put in contact of this part, all the problems of your life, all the activities of your being, all the elements of your consciousness, then they begin to be organized in such a way that your being becomes one unity, a single multiplicity, complex but organized, centralized around a fixed point, so that the central will, central consciousness, central truth has the power to govern all the parts, for they are all in order, organized around this central presence. Our Divine Mother says, naturally then, your action is guided by the Divine, which will not have the perfection of expression it has when one has acquired a conscious organization around this Divine center, being an instrument of the Divine force, says our Divine Mother.